This is a video just to let you know that starting next week I'm going to begin another of my Let's Read video series. In this time I'm going to read Is God a Delusion by Eric Wrighton. The last time I read one, it was the case for A Creator by Lee Strobel. This time I thought I'd try something a bit different, and I just want to talk a little bit in this video about why I chose this book. Because it's not one of the big Christian apologist books. Eric Wrighton, as far as I can tell, isn't a particularly well-known Christian apologist in many circles. The short answer for why I chose this book is because I have it on my bookshelf. And I thought I would cover the books I have before I went out looking for more books to do. More interesting question perhaps is, why did I have it on my bookshelf to start with? And that's because I bought it. This book came out in 2009, and it's partially, as the title would suggest, it's partially aimed as a response to Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, which was 2006, just about 2.5 years afterwards this one was published. And the reason I bought this book was because at the time, I was late to the party. At the time I found this book on a bookshelf in a bookshop. I just finished reading a bunch of atheist books. I'd read The God Delusion, I'd read God is Not Great, I'd read God the Failed Hypothesis, and I think I might have even read Sam Harris at the time. And I was concerned that I was only consuming literature from that side of the debate, as it were. And although they seemed to make very reasonable, rational arguments that I found very convincing, I was well aware of my own tendency to be swept up in other people's writings and my inability to always think rationally and clearly. And I thought that it would be useful for me to at least read some apologetic, not that I knew the term at that point, some literature from the other side, as it were. And my thinking was that I could then compare the two to see what made sense. My sense was that I probably wouldn't enjoy them, but I should at least make some attempt. Anyway, so I went to the bookshop to find one, and this is the one that came across. This was just happened to be the one that was in my local bookshop. And I thought, well, I've read The God Delusion. This seems like a fairly direct response to it, and so it'll be interesting to see what the rebuttals are to Dawkins' arguments. Now, it was a little bit of a bait and switch. This book was retitled so as to make it sound like it's much more of a response to Dawkins than it really is. It is actually not a direct response to Dawkins, but in fact is a response to atheists, the new atheists as they were, and the fundamentalist Christian right. So actually what this book is, which I found interesting, not realising what I was getting for, is a liberal progressive Christian apologetics book. And that makes it quite different from much of the apologetic material which gets covered on YouTube. So quite rightly, most atheists cover the more fundamentalist, biblical, literalist type Christian apologetics on YouTube. Those are the books that get attention, your Ray Comforts, your Kent Hovins, even your William Lane Craigs, who have a somewhat literal interpretation of the Bible. Now, William Lane Craig dances around quite what he believes. He's quite happy with old Earth creationism, as it were, but he still believes that the history in the book is fairly historical. Eric Wrighton doesn't. He takes that much more progressive view that the Bible is not particularly factually accurate and isn't really the core of his faith. His faith is much more built around his understanding of God. So he is a philosophy professor and I think a theologian at the University of Oklahoma. And so he has a much more progressive take on things. Now, that's not to say that he's any more reasonable. I found this interesting, one, because it doesn't get that much coverage on YouTube. Fair enough. The people who subscribe to the Eric Wrighton type of theology are not the people who are actively campaigning against gay marriage or abstinence-only education, or all of the the things that seem to do the most harm in our society. But, like all religious moderates, they provide cover for the more extreme religious people, or the more fundamentalist religious people. But also in my context here in Western Australia, these kinds of Christians are very much the majority, and they are very much the majority voice of Christians where I live. So a lot of the young earth creationist, biblical literalist stuff simply isn't that relevant here in Western Australia. Those Christians don't have political clout. They don't steer the debate on anything. The mainstream Christianity here that most Christians subscribe to, in fact, an overwhelming majority of Christians here subscribe to, is a liberal, progressive Christianity that is not founded in a biblical literalism, isn't founded in any kind of straight up doctrines of hatred of homosexuals or teaching of creationism or any of those kind of, the severe harms that other countries, particularly, we're most familiar with in the US, but also to a lesser extent in the UK. Those kind of things don't happen here with the same amount. That's not to say they don't happen at all, and of course religion is an issue wherever it happens to be, but we have quite a different kind of Christianity here that often gets coverage on YouTube. And so I wanted to cover this book because it has sort of a different theology than what is often covered. And so I thought it would make a nice counterpoint. Although, to be honest, mainly I wanted to cover this book because I happen to have it. So I read it when I first got it, which must have been, can't have been that long after it was out, so 2009, 2010 perhaps. I haven't read it since, so I will be rereading it over the coming weeks. It seems to have 10 chapters and an introduction, all of roughly equal size. So I'll start at the beginning and I'll do the introduction next week and then a chapter a week after that. So we should be done in 11 weeks. Knowing me, I'm sure things will come up and I'll be bumped off the schedule, so it may take me an extra week or two to get it done. So, if you're interested in reading along with me, I found a free PDF of the book online. I'll put the link in the description box below. Obviously, you can buy it. I'm sure you can still get it online in a variety of places. The few reviews I've read of it, Christians seem to like it, but then, of course, you would if you agree with it. So yeah, get reading if you want to, otherwise I'll take one for the team and read it for you. And join me next week, next Thursday. I will be covering the introduction. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you next week. See ya.